there's definitely that. And so, yeah, but let's see here. Kevin Smith went on Theo Von's show. Oh.
Need help?
Do you remember when I said if Kevin Smith went on Theo Von's show, it would have 1 million views? That's crazy. Wow. Wow. Whoa. What a surprise. Look at that. It's fucking obvious.
Need help?
Everybody knows it. Yeah, duh. Yeah, genius. Yeah, I'm not a wizard for knowing that. I'm normal. Anyway, do you think there's deliberate efforts in the gaming industry to mute voices? Yes. I think that the gaming journalism industry absolutely tried to bully and mute people that disagreed with them. They 100% did that. And that's one of the reasons why I am not sympathetic at all to them whenever bad things happen to them. It's because you actively use this as a weapon, and now the weapon is being used against you. And, you know, you get what you fucking deserve. The real reason life is brutally unfair for men.
We now have this digital world that we can live our lives in as a distraction from the real world. And there's now more confusion than ever over what it is to be a man and the role of a man in a, you know, and then we look at the stats around suicidality. And I think in Europe,
guys
the
kill
biggest
themselves
killer
all the
of
time.
men under the age of 45 is themselves currently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is the shifting idea of what it is to be a man having an impact on people's sense of self and their purpose?
100%. So there's a crisis that's going on in
It's a
men.
huge identity crisis. Massive.
And people think that this is new, but I don't think it's new. It's always been there. So if you look at like, you know, even 50, 60 years ago, 80% of suicides are still going to be men. So historically, men have been killing themselves for like 100 years and no one's been...
Well, I mean, what's that seppuku? The Japanese swordsman thing? Yeah. I mean, plenty of times, like, absolutely.
Paying attention. We're just noticing now because the problem seems to be getting worse.
Yeah, it is.
So there's a couple of things that are really interesting to understand. So one is that if we look at what technology is doing to our brains, the first thing that it's doing is it is externalizing our attention.
Oh.
So if you look back, like, let's say 1,000 years ago, as human beings, we spent a lot more time with ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you got that's one thing is people, like, I've noticed this myself, is that this is going to sound really bad, but I'm going to just say it. Every time I get to a stoplight or a stop sign I have to wait, I will sometimes pick out my phone and I will look at my phone while I'm driving. How many of you guys do that? Be honest. I do it all the time. Yeah, I do it constantly. Okay, so I'm basically, all right, carefully. I have not run over anybody that I'm aware of.
So let's say that you and I go out hunting. And then let's say you shoot an arrow at a deer and you miss. And then I shoot an arrow at a deer and I hit.
Yeah.
So in this moment, I'm superior to you.
Sure.
And then we pick up the deer and we're carrying it back. And then we have about 2 or 3 hours to take that emotional insult and we kind of process it. We just give our mind space to process it, which it does automatically. Now, if you look at what happens in people's days,
well,
they don't
is also that, like, I mean, then you're helping the guy cook the deer and eat the deer and skinning the deer. And now both of you are eating the deer. So, like, you take part in the other person's success. And, like, now I think life, especially social media, is seen way more as a zero-sum game. So, like, whenever somebody sees somebody else doing well, there's not really the enthusiasm to compliment that person or to be positive towards them, but instead to undermine them and make it invalid what their success is.
Actually have any time to process what happens to them because we are so constantly distracted by external things. Yeah. So I don't know if you're like this, but I was in this point where I was idiotically efficient. So I would wake up in the morning.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. Like, this is one of the things that with, like, my dad, whenever my dad passed away, like, basically for the first 2 weeks, I was just kind of like, I was so busy. Bro, dying is complicated. Holy fuck. There's all this paperwork. You've got to fill out these forms. You've got to make all these phone calls. You got to talk to everybody. Holy shit. God damn, bro. That's just shit's annoying, man. A lot of shit to handle. Exactly. It's complicated. But then one day I just finally got down, and I feel like I still haven't fully processed it. And, like, yesterday was kind of bad for me, I'm going to be honest, because it was like the first holiday that I spent without either of my parents, right? because it was Halloween. Like my dad would take me out trick or treating and everything, and I don't want to talk a whole lot about that right now, but like just in general, that's the way that I felt. And it was a weird, not so great day for me yesterday. But I'm 30. I'm a grown ass man. I'm a 35-year-old man. I can handle this. Like I'll be fine. But anyway, even now, yeah, at 30, absolutely. And so the truth is, though, is like I remember like one of the days I just kind of went into his house and I just sat in his chair and I just cried. And I was just like, it was like 2 weeks after he had passed away, and I was just like, fuck, man. And even now I think about this shit. I do. I think about this shit all the time because it's so as normal. It is, but like I was so distracted prior to that I didn't really even have time to process those emotions. That's the point. And I think that's what happens with people all the time. And I think that it's like you're doing that, you're microdosing on that, and then eventually it builds up to being like an actual problem where you never process. It's what I said before about how like people go on the internet with like unresolved personal trauma and then they want the entire internet to live it out for them. So like, for example, like you had a girlfriend that cheated on you. All girls are whores now. You had a boyfriend that, was abusive. Oh, I'd rather live with a bear, right? Like this is your own personal trauma that now you're putting on the whole world. And I think that like there's a lot of examples of that. So instead of working through it privately, they do this instead.
Morning, and I would listen to a podcast while I'm like doing my exercise or whatever. And then even when I'm cooking, I'm listening to a lecture.
Yeah.
And then like when I'm walking to the train, I have earbuds in and I'm listening to a lecture there. On the train, I'm reading. I wanted my life to be completely efficient.
Maximized, yeah.
I didn't want to waste a single moment.
I literally listen to the news in the shower. It's
right. So we don't want to waste time. And so if you really think about it, where's the attention of your mind? Your mind is pointed outside of you.
Yeah.
And so then what happens is once we do not pay attention to ourselves, we lose sight of our internal signals. Literally in the same way that if you raise a
100%,
child in a dark
100%.
cave, the photoreceptors in their eyes won't develop. They will
That's exactly the like in my house, all my lights are always off. Because I think that it will allow me to eventually, I can almost see in the dark. I can almost read, I can read a sheet of paper and almost with like solid, strong role model. It's like you want to look at like who is a positive, who is a great male role model. It's not simply like you look at that like my role model. Like I would say like who would I say like Aaron, like Lord of the Rings. Like that's the guy. That's the guy. And like a lot of people think that like masculinity being a man is like the ability of willingness to exercise power. I don't think that's true. Yeah, or Goku, right? Or Goku. Think about how completely culturally universal Goku is. You have guys in China that love Goku. Japan obviously love Goku. Europe that love Goku. South America, holy fuck. Like, they go crazy for that shit. And everybody in the whole world is like, they see Goku and they say they want that. That's me, right? And so, not Goku? No, I think so.
This person is talking about what it means to be a man.
Yeah.
And now, since I don't have any internal source of information, I'm trying to figure out what it means to be a man from the outside world. And this is when men get truly fucked.
Yep.
Because what it means to be a
Yep.
man, we are getting all kinds of mixed signals. So on the one hand, it means being physically
It's also another big problem too, is that, and I don't know if he's going to talk about this or not, is that I think that self-help and information on the internet and people looking for any sort of advice on the internet is incredibly toxic, because the most popular people in a lot of cases tell you that your fault is somebody else's. It's the Jews, it's women, it's the patriarchy, it's rape culture, it's fucking white supremacy. It's never you. And that's the problem, is like, so much of the, and this is, I've said this before, right? So much of these things are constantly about why you're doing people basically are looking for someone to tell them that you're doing your best whenever you're sitting at home jerking off to animals that aren't real on DeviantArt and playing Marvel Rivals for 12 hours a day. And if you don't tell them that that's the right option and you're doing the best you can, they're going to look for somebody else that will. That's the problem. It's so toxic. Massively toxic.
fit. On the other hand, it means being a provider. On one hand, it means having sex with as many women as you can find. On the other hand, it means having sex with just one woman and being a really solid man and being a good father. And then there's also people telling us that you're shit, right? That you're toxic, that your testosterone level makes you violent, that you're evil, that you're privileged, that there's a patriarchy, all this kind of stuff. So we're getting all this information from the outside about what it means. The other, there's all kinds of interesting ramifications of this. So men in today's society are not allowed to complain. So if you complain and you're a successful person, you're a privileged person, everyone is going to think you're arrogant, everyone is going to think, oh my God.
That's right. That's right. People that are seen in a privileged position, I think this is true for streamers. I have a lot of streamers that will talk to me, and they'll tell me that I really wish I could tell people this, and they'll be upset whenever they'll tell their audience something. Damn, there's a rainbow. It's a sign? Wait, it's a sign for what? What do you mean?
Who's this fucking guy? This guy doesn't know what my life is like. How does he have any right to complain?
Yeah.
And even your mind will tell you this. You'll look at these people and you'll be like, yeah, I don't have a right to complain. But now we need to stop for a second and think about what it does
I think also, to a certain extent, it is true. Because a lot of people don't acknowledge how good they have it. Every single person that has the ability to watch this video has an insurmountable advantage over that is over more than 1 billion people in this world right now. You've already spawn RNG'd yourself above 1 billion that don't have access to the internet. They don't have access to technology. And people never think about that. Also, I know y'all for listening to this. This is in English. English is one of the most well-spoken languages in the world. The truth is that learning English growing up is going to be probably more beneficial for you if you do anything outside of your country than learning French, because France is a much smaller country. Now, obviously, there's a lot of people that are not but in a general sense, knowing a global cultural language, I think that obviously you have Mandarin, Cantonese, English, and Spanish, right, which are some of the biggest languages. Knowing those languages is a tremendous advantage and a massive privilege. And a lot of people never understand privilege outside of the spectrum of race or gender, which is, I think, very, very stupid. And I think that, again, it goes back to having the locus of agency inside of yourself rather than external.
Psychology when you as a human being are not allowed to articulate yourself. I've worked with people who've grown up in abusive households where children will say to their parents, Mommy, Daddy, I'm hurting.
Yeah.
And the parent smacks him across the face. How dare you? You're so lucky. You don't realize the sacrifices I make for you. It's traumatizing to the child when they say, I am suffering, and no one listens.
My dad would do this all the time. Bro, every time that I told him I had a problem, he would tell me about his problem that was worse. And honestly, it was a point of contention between him and I. I never really got over it. I still resent that.
This is what we're doing to the generation of men. People are saying, I am suffering. For 100 years, men have been killing themselves. 80% of suicides are men. The most dangerous thing for a man under 45 is themselves.
That's right.
And these people have been literally killing themselves because no one has been listening to them.
Yep.
So in the same way that you grow up with as a child in a household that's abusive, where no one takes you seriously, no one listens to your suffering, and now we even have successful men who are not allowed to complain.
Well,
So
those are especially the ones that aren't allowed to complain, because they're the ones that have access to the resources and all this, like methods of power, and so you especially don't want to hear them complain.
Impact is the same. Anytime you have a human being who is suffering in some way and they cannot find connection with another human being, they cannot find compassion with another human being, that person is going to be depressed. And if you look at the statistics on suicide, it's very interesting. So the number one thing that correlates with male suicide is not depression. And this is super scary. There's one study I saw recently that suggests that 50% of men who kill themselves have no history or evidence of mental illness. And this, I believe the statistic in my clinical practice because I know what depression looks like. I know what bipolar disorder looks like. And half the men that I work with, at least, are not actually mentally ill. See, mental illness means a pathology of the mind, which means that the mind is malfunctioning. Most of the suicidal men that I work with, their mind isn't malfunctioning. They genuinely have a life that is no longer worth living.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
They're looking at things and rejecting and realizing there's no way out of the situation.
Yeah.
So they turn to suicide.
Exactly.
So I know it's kind of like a very controversial statement, but
yeah, no, 100%. Like, I felt that way myself many times. Like many times I felt like, oh man, maybe I should just kill myself. Like even nowadays, like I'm gonna take another picture of the rainbow because it got brighter. Yeah, like I feel that way like regularly. I do. But it doesn't mean you do it, right? But I mean, you feel that way sometimes for sure.
I think that's what my clinical practice has shown, and there's some research to even back that up. So if we sort of look at what's going on with men, we're sort of, they have nowhere to turn to. And the number one thing that correlates with it is not mental illness, but it's a sense of thwarted belonging. This is kind of like multivariate regression. But basically what happens is what causes people to kill themselves is they try to connect with others and they get rejected.
Yeah, and this is what happens. People, that's why they're going through, like, they hate everybody else, etc. Yeah, show us. Right there. Can you see it? Right there. Maybe it's like right about that, through there. Yeah, so there it is. And so it's pretty crazy, right? And wow, yeah, I know. Like it's one of the best ones I ever seen. It is. It's one of the best ones ever. And anyway, so generally I think that is 100% fucking real. Like absolutely, guys, they will try to make a connection. It doesn't work out. I think that a lot of guys, like when do people probably kill themselves? Probably isn't the day that a lot of people kill themselves like the most, like the suicides, like pretty close to, if not on Valentine's Day? Like I think this is a pretty common thing. I could be wrong about that though. At least men.
Specifically, a very specific research term called thwarted belonging. So I try to belong to a group.
About the same thing.
And that group, or multiple groups usually, will thwart my attempts to join the tribe, to join the group. And this is what actually correlates a lot with suicide.
Yeah.
So what's going on with men right now is that we really don't allow them to suffer, because then you're not. Yeah. And we're so externalized with our attention that we're not connecting with ourselves. And so we're looking to other people to tell us what it means to be a man. But that may or may not work.
There's less fathers. Like there are less present fathers that are actual like men that are playing a role inside of their kids' upbringing. And I think that's another huge factor. Is they don't have any father figure growing up that they can look at and be like, okay, this is kind of what I should do, right?
For you, right? That may have been what worked for them. So then we kind of get into this problem where we're disconnected from ourselves. And then, like, the world doesn't accept us, we're not allowed to suffer, and that's the problem.
What is the remedy to this?
So I think the first thing is we must reconnect with ourselves, right? So when you're kind of saying, like, why does everyone think, oh, I need to, like, achieve this, I need to make this money, and things like that, where did you learn that you should do that? You learned all that from the outside.
The internet.
Instagram, right? So we get fed all of these ideas because if you look at all these,
you have to live your life a certain way. You have to be a certain person. You have to have these ideas. You have to, achieve these things and all of that. It's all bullshit. You don't need to do any of that. You do whatever the fuck you want.
What are they doing? They're never crying. They're smiling. Some of them will even pay very attractive women to take pictures with them.
Well, some of them are crying, but they're crying and uploading it for ulterior motives, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of them are genuinely suffering too. But then it's also like there's all kinds of weird stuff going on. So one thing is like people say that men we don't allow men to be emotional. Nowadays, what people say, oh, men are allowed to cry. So this is something that I experience even in my life, where
Nah, bro, that's like a Venus flytrap. People, you don't do it. Don't do it. Remember whenever Kyle Rittenhouse cried and his birthday, and then people used that as a meme for like years? Like, honestly, like I try not to cry in front of anybody. Just in private.
we allow men to cry, but we don't allow men to be angry. But why are men no longer allowed to be angry? Just think about it for a second. So anger is just a completely normal emotion, right? But if I'm in a situation where I'm in an argument with my wife, and I feel emotion A, and I express emotion A, and she feels emotion B, and she expresses emotion B, these two things should be equal, right? We as both.
There are so many cases in society where the feminine norm is considered better and more acceptable than the male norm. And I think there's like a over-feminization of society that happens inside of education, that happens inside of, I think, popular culture. And I think that it also happens inside of companies too. And basically, whenever it comes down to which emotion is correct, is it the man's emotion or the woman's emotion? The typically male emotions are seen as wrong, and the typically female emotions are seen as acceptable. It's a huge problem.
Human beings get to express what we feel. Now, in the case of me expressing anger and her expressing sadness, she's crying and I'm yelling. Suddenly, I've become a villain.
That's right.
It's so interesting.
Yep.
I saw a viral tweet yesterday. It was someone Googling, my wife is yelling at me, what should I do? And then my husband is yelling at me, what should I do?
Yeah, and the wife is like, call the police, like, you know, this person's terrible. And then the husband is like, what did you do wrong?
Yeah. Google domestic violence helpline comes up as like a Google.
Oh!
My wife is yelling at me, what should I do?
Damn.
As you said, in the case of villainization, I know that most domestic violence comes from. It's interesting that we see the emotion, we interpret the emotions in the violence.
Well, just because a lot of domestic violence, and especially like death, right, is going to come from men because men are bigger and stronger, that doesn't mean that it doesn't also happen to men. That's the problem. Is that just because something is statistically less common doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. Like, let's say it's 80-20. That means it happens 20% of the time. That's an insane. Men don't report it as much? Yeah, they don't. Well, because of, you know, like, remember that ratchet fucking hoe, Nina? Where she said, oh, well, like, you know, are you really being a man if you actually are complaining about being sexually assaulted? That's the type of toxic shit that is actually super bad, and I think we should just get rid of that. Should be embarrassed. Yeah, exactly. He is a dude. I don't know. Like, look, I don't want to get in. Looks like a girl to me, but I have no idea.
Absolutely, right? So we as a society will say like, oh, men need to be in touch with their emotions, but not anger. And then this is what really screws men, because as men, we are socialized and conditioned to only feel anger. This is the only emotion you are allowed to feel as a man growing up. And this is the one emotion that gets demonized when you're older.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a simple example. So like I used to get bullied a lot, right? So when I get bullied in school, like what am I supposed to do?
Stab.
You can fight back.
Absolutely, right? It's fighting back.
That's right.
Like you didn't say talk to the teacher.
That's what my dad told me to do. John, 8th grade, like there would be a kid trying to put his hand in my pocket, and like I told my dad about it. He's like, you stab him. I'm like, he got a fork, I stabbed it right in him. I broke it off in his skin. Never did that. I was in 8th grade.
You didn't say ask for help. You didn't say cry about it, because if I cry about it, what's going to happen? Absolutely. So we turn every emotion, so men experience anger, we literally suppress and are conditioned to suppress all other emotions except for anger. And then if you talk to men about their experience of life, anger is always the first thing that comes out of their mouth.
Yep.
Someone breaks up with you, how do you feel about it? No, that's not what to say. I feel pissed off. How could she do this to me? And then
I generally actually don't get mad. Like, it's rare for me to get angry. It happens, but like I try to avoid it as much as possible because I've felt like I look back in my life and I say, when was the last time I made a good decision when I was mad? I remember. Never. Never. I've never made a good decision when I was mad.
we vent that anger
That's
on
it.
the internet, and then this turns into misogyny,
Mhm.
right? And then we get demonized for it. And it's not
That's
that
right.
there isn't. We should be harshly judged if we act
But
on
why
those.
is it that women can go on the internet and talk all this shit on men, see how horrible men are, how bad men are, but if men criticize toxic feminine behavior, we're seen as we hate women and all this bullshit? That's the reason why. That's the problem isn't that you can't do it. The problem is there's a double standard.
But what we also need to consider is that the men who are saying these kinds of toxic things are saying that for a reason. This is because of their upbringing. This is because of the world that they lived in. Right? So we're conditioned to only experience anger. Even sadness gets turned into anger. Shame gets turned into anger. Fear gets turned into anger. Right? So if I'm afraid of something happening, what do I do? I man up. Get angry. Right? Like, let's go, son. Let's go. This is the emotion that we have to overcome fear. So we don't feel any of those other emotions. We're left only
At the root part of aggression, I heard someone say to me that the men, when they encounter that insecurity, they only aggression.
So I wouldn't agree with the first thing that part of all anger is insecurity, but I would absolutely agree with the second thing that the only way we know how to respond is with anger. Because
Here's the exact quote, just found it. The source of aggression is insecurity. As we are unconsciously aware that our position in life is never secure, people feel increasingly insecure and helpless, so they will be increasingly aggressive and confrontational at a personal and a social level.
So let's tunnel down into that for a second. Okay, so I think that that is true on some level, but also I would disagree. So the first thing is that we have parts.
I don't think it's insecurity. I think it's scarcity, and scarcity drives insecurity. Scarcity is generally what I think is the root of almost all problems that people have. Is some form of scarcity, and understanding what that form is will solve their problem. I mean, obviously, there's no 100%
of our brain. Even animals feel anger. But I think that, like, when two dogs are fighting over territory, I don't think that that's born of some kind of identity of insecurity, right? So if we really look at, like, the evolutionary purpose of anger, this is my opinion, is that anger is the emotion that we feel to protect our territory. It's a protective emotion. So if I slap you across the face, what's the first thing that you're going to feel? It's going to be anger.
Yeah.
So if I insult you, you're going to feel angry. It's fascinating the way that it works. So anger causes our thoughts to be faster. Anger causes our peripheral vision to collapse to 30 degrees. So I only see what's in front of me.
This is what happened. This is the reason why I can't play competitive games, is because I get mad and then I play like shit. That's exactly right. That's 100% what happens. And I know it about myself. That's the worst thing, is I know that about myself. I know I'm crashing out while I'm crashing out.
And it also makes me less sensitive to pain. So like my nociceptors will actually like start to be depressed when I feel angry. Right? So if I get into a fight, I'm gonna feel it tomorrow, but like while I'm getting hit, I'm not feeling it. So I don't think it's born of all insecurity. I think anger is simply an evolutionary response. It's something that we experience to protect ourselves. That's why we feel angry, right? So if I attack baby bear, mama bear is gonna come out angry. So it's really protective. Now, I agree with the second part of the statement 100%, that when we feel insecure, especially as men, the only way we are taught to deal with our problems is to deal with them. Right? So if I'm feeling insecure, if I'm feeling like someone's bullying me, what do? I put them in their place. Right? I don't try to make peace. I don't complain to someone because no one's going to take me seriously. right? I have to stand up for myself.
Yeah, exactly. And like anybody that cries about it or acts like a victim, like people hate them and like they make fun of them, meme on them, and all kinds of shit like that. Absolutely. Totally
We've
true.
got the first point there about how we
Completely
remedy this
true.
challenge, which is about self-expression, more self-expression. That's what I heard.
Not self-expression, introspection.
Introspection, getting to know ourselves.
Right. So it's very simple. So if you look at your idea of what it means to be a man, what percentage of that idea comes outside of you? And what percentage of that idea comes from within you?
About 90% comes from outside of me.
And that's why 90%.
I never even thought about what it means to be anything, bro. I just went and I did whatever the fuck I want whenever I was a kid. That was the way I looked at it. Like, I never really, this might be weird, but like, I never really looked for a role model. I never really looked for anybody to like base what I would do off of. I just pretty much grew up and I just did whatever the fuck I wanted, and I didn't care about what anybody else thought for any reason. Like, even if like my parents were really just mad at me, I just, like, it would not even register to me. Well, who cares what you think? You know, this is just me. You know, like, I'm gonna do what I want. That was me. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, look up to yourself. Yeah, so you're spoiled? Really? I mean, I wouldn't say spoiled. It's just that I never considered other people's approval as valid or important. Because in a lot of cases, I never considered a lot of other people valid or important. The only person that mattered was me.
People,
That's the
we're
truth.
90% fucked.
I'll just be honest.
Right? So, and if you look, and I'm sure you know this, and you've probably done this too, if you look at where is the goodness in your life, where does it come from, Stephen? It doesn't come from what other people have told you. They may have told you something, but then you looked within yourself, and then you found that to be true.
Yeah.
The goodness in you, the
Most
motivation,
humble
the
streamer? Yeah.
really good motivation in you, not chasing things, but the duty that you have, you know, everything that you really strive for, all that good stuff comes from inside. And the problem is that we live in a world that pulls our attention away from ourselves.
What do you think of Andrew Tatism then?
So
pulled attention. I think also like people just, they never really stop to think about how they feel, and they never really
Need
stop
help?
to think. People constantly are looking for like another type of stimulation rather than trying to use their own mind to have any sort of calmness at all. And like I think that's really what it is for a lot of people. And that's what it's been for me in a lot of cases too. Also, is that like if I can just lay down and just relax and just do nothing, I can kind of like recenter my brain. And I think that like after I do a stream, for example, it can be tiresome to do a stream. I know, you know, people are, oh, streaming is easy. Sure, yeah, it is. But like imagine talking nonstop for 5 hours with like 2 30-second breaks, and you're constantly reading things. Like there's a lot of mental energy that goes into that, right? And it's like there's never even like 2 seconds that you can like lose focus. So you have a lot of like, it's not physically taxing in a way, but like there's a mental like tax that has. And so like whenever I stop and you decompress, it can feel very, very good to do that.
as a general rule, I don't comment on people that I don't speak to. So tell me the features of what you're talking about.
Okay, so
Andrew
the
Tate.
recent wave of internet masculine
Internet dads, that's really what it is. It's just, you know, internet dads.
Lots of women and sports cars, and there's many of them. And they seem to be resonant for some kind of reason. The way to be a man is to have loads of money, lots of women, these kind of cars, physical strength, and there's just a huge typically men that are now disciples of that religion.
So I think if you dislike that toxic masculinity, what we need to understand is it's the people who hate that toxic masculinity that are driving these people towards it. So I know this is kind of crazy. So what's happened is this has grown, right? And as it's grown, what have we done? We've demonized these people. We've said these people are bad. And as we demonize them, what's happened? They've grown stronger. So this is something that's very important to understand. If you are a man and you say, I am suffering, what is the response?
Shut up.
Shut the fuck up, pussy ass bitch. That's the way it is. It's gonna get worse.
Absolutely.
Not in those exact words, but that's whatever the words are, that's what they mean.
Now, I want us to be very, very careful, right? So if you are listening to Steven say people tell you to shut up, and your first thought as a listener is, no, that's not true, that's the problem. So if people agree with you, they understand what you're saying. But if they disagree with you, that's the problem. We literally have a man who is telling us right now that your experiences, when I say I'm suffering, people tell you to shut up. And then
people they invalidate the way that you feel. This is a huge problem on the internet where people aren't allowed to feel certain ways, and any sort of emotion that a person's going to have in one direction is categorized as problematic or bad in one way or another.
They're going to be judging you for saying that, and they're going to be saying, no, that's not true.
They're going to be saying, shut up.
Absolutely.
That's right.
So this is exactly the problem. So men are struggling right now, and the rest of the world says, no, you're not. You're privileged. You're a man. There's a patriarchy. And I'm not commenting on the sociology of it. There is a patriarchy, whatever. Men have many advantages in life. I've experienced many advantages of being a man. Absolutely. Let's not go there. I'm talking about the individual experience of men. So there's one group of people on the planet who says, yes, your life will suck. And that's these toxic masculine people. They're the only people.
Yeah, they're the ones that are listening. They will enable you. Absolutely.
That truly validate men's experiences. Because everyone else says, why are you complaining? And these guys say, yeah, you're a fucking loser. What are you going to do about it? They at least meet you where you're at. And they say, yes, your life is hard, and I will show you a way to make it better. Whereas the rest of the world says, no, your life isn't hard. What are you complaining about?
Yeah,
and finally,
born a man and feeling emotions is never going to work. It's never going to win over men. And it is a narrative that's been created by Karens that hate men. That's basically it. It's Karens that hate men, they hate masculinity, they have some problem with their fucking ma or their dad or their brother or their boyfriend or something like that, and they've demonized all of this, like, just all the way through. And I think that that's also another, there is a huge amount of animosity that I think young men have towards that.
And I've seen this as a doctor. I've seen patients who are complaining
Men have
about...
an advantage, but you can't explain that to someone who's poor and struggling? Well, men have advantages that women don't have, and women have advantages that men don't have, right? So it's kind of like in classic WoW. So women are like hunters, and men are like warriors, where women have like a very good leveling build, and I think that they level up, like, you know, you're level 30, you're level 24 as a hunter, you can solo all kinds of things, you can do all kinds of stuff, and you're very efficient, whereas like if you're a warrior, you've got to fight one mob at a time and then sit down and eat and drink. But by the time you get to level 60, then, you know, your top damage, and the hunters can't even do shit. The only thing they're there for is to give you aspect of the pack so you can run to the next mob to kill it. That's it. And so, like, that's the difference between, like, I think the experience that, like, young men have. Because, like, whenever you're a young guy, right? How many of you guys had this experience? You're a young guy, you're 20 years old, you're about 20 years old, and you have a resentment for women because you feel like women have it a lot easier, right? Well, women have it so much easier than men. It's not fair that she gets these opportunities and I don't. She's making all this money and I'm not. She has this guy that, you know, is paying for her stuff and I don't have this. But then you get older, and now you're, let's say, 31, and that same girl is saddled with a kid from this guy that left her, and she's living by herself, and it sucks for her, and her life is awful at this point, and it's just going to get worse. And so that's really kind of what happens, is that, like, I think that a lot of young men haven't seen that life progression happen, where a lot of the privileges that young women have are privileges for young women. And the majority of your life, you will not be young, if you're lucky. And so because of that, those privileges erode, and that's never a lot of the advantages. You know, that's the late game scaling, right? That's the, you know, level 55 warrior that's out damaging the level 60 hunter. There it is. Yeah, men scale way better than women do. They do. Just the way it is.
About pain. Women who are complaining about pain because they have an internal bleed within the wall of their uterus that cannot get detected. And they're saying, I'm hurting, I'm hurting, I'm hurting, and we ignore this person's pain. And that's when things go bad. So for years and years and years...
Oh yeah, give me more gems. I need 1200 more.
Accepts them with open arms. And the more that we demonize them, So when someone starts believing in this toxic masculinity, what is the response?
This is also this is like a precursor of why I think a lot of men are becoming right-wing. This is why I think you're having such a massive distinction between like young men and young women becoming more right-wing. And the reason why is very simply because at least Nick Fuentes agrees with you that things are against you, right? He listens. He doesn't just call you a loser, right? Like that's basically it. And that's why a lot of young guys are turning towards those types of role models, those types of characters. Yeah, right-wing makes more sense now? Yeah, exactly.
Do people ever ask, like, help me understand what your life is like? Like, what do you like about this person? Because everyone's going to them for a reason, but we never bother to ask. Why are you listening to this person? What does this mean to you? We see these posts all the time in our community. My boyfriend is getting into this stuff.
Yeah.
My son is getting this stuff.
I don't give a fuck what I get. It's just important that I get finished.
Exactly. And this is the problem, that you never even considered why he's getting into it. You never even considered his feelings. Maybe that's the reason why he's getting into it in the first place.
Understand it first. Because everyone's trying to stop it, and no one is bothering to listen to what the experience of these men are. And that's why it's getting worse and worse and worse as we try to stop it.
So if I'm the mother of a son who is watching a lot of these sort of toxic male influences online, what would be a better approach versus just banning the computer and telling them that that's toxic and not to look at it?
Help me understand what you like about this.
Yeah.
What is it like to be a man in today's day and age? How do you feel about yourself? How does it feel knowing that?
And the reason why parents don't want to do this is because this takes time, thoughtfulness, and intelligence. It's a lot easier than just say, oh, you're not using that computer anymore. You're going to look up all more of that crazy Hitler stuff. That's it.
That 70 to 80% of women want you to make more money than them, and yet 60% of people who graduate from college are women. So men are living in a world today where there are impossible expectations to meet. And so, like, what is it like to be someone who fundamentally has no chance at success? Right? These are the kinds of...
This is the reason why a lot of guys feel this way, is they feel like they don't really have the opportunities. And also, I think that there's like definitely, I think dating apps really create this mentality where it is like the top 10% of guys are seen as the ones that are able to hook up with all of these girls and having access to, you know, having a pretty girlfriend or something like that. And I think that's also very, very tremendously negatively affected, like, I guess, like the way that men see the world. That's been really, really problematic.
Things that you need to...
More like 0.1%? I mean, like, maybe. I don't know. Like, I've never had a dating app before in my life, to be honest with you. I haven't. So I don't know what it's like. But from everything that I hear, it's horrible. And also, like, the women's experience is also really bad, too. But it's just a different set of problems. Instead of getting no matches, you get 40 matches of 40-year-old men whenever you're 19.
To these people.
And they're fat.
Give them an alternate place to go where they can be heard and helped, supported, and understood. See, anytime we make a judgment, our mind already has a conclusion.
Yeah.
There's nothing left to learn anytime we're judgmental. So what do we do to all these people who are toxic men? We even create the word toxic. We literally label them as bad in some way. And I'm not saying that
it's a very simple idea. There's a word for toxic male behavior, but there's not a word for toxic female behavior. It's pretty simple. I mean, it really, think about it.
Behavior isn't toxic. But what I'm trying to point out is that even in our language, there is so much harsh judgment.
Yeah.
So I once had a patient.
We both just did it, didn't we?
Absolutely. So I once had a patient who was smearing feces.
And I'm trying to do it.
All over the school. So adolescent kid, right? And when you have a kid who's literally taking a shit and wiping it on the walls and stuff, what happens is the kid gets punished. Kid gets punished again and again and again. The one really sad thing is no one ever asks, why are you doing this?
Yep.
What's going on inside you? Because healthy kids don't do this.
I would say that's generally true.
It's only kids who've been traumatized in some way.
Yeah.
And as I've worked with incels, as I've worked with people who are toxically masculine, it always starts with trauma. And when I say always, this is a clinical experience, but I'm talking about 100%. So 100% of people start on this path by getting hurt in some way, by getting taken advantage of in some way, by sacrifice.
Villain origin story. There it is. Remember that kid the other day that got mad about me making a joke about his fan art? 5 years, bro. That dude was sitting on it for 5 years. He let that cook, and then finally he just let that shit out. Yep.
Something and not getting something in return. And they have their share of responsibility too. I'm not saying that they're hapless victims, but I think that people who are raised with love and compassion and do have connections don't go down this road.
It's much less common.
You're so passionate about this, aren't you? Because I feel like your eyes have seen in your practice.
Well, because you see a bunch of fucking people kill themselves and you actually try to help them and then it doesn't work. I mean, that's the reason why. I mean, you've got to be passionate about it. I mean, and it is really sad. It's tremendously sad. And I think it's going to get worse too.
Pretty heartbreaking things.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like, see, unless we are willing to be what these people need, they're going to continue going down the toxic masculinity.
Of course.
Someone needs to start offering these people.
This is true too, is that like you can't just tell people, no, you're not allowed to think this, and then they all are like, oh shit, oh my god, let me just do exactly what you tell me now.
Full safe haven.
Yeah, obviously.
No matter what they say, or not no matter, I think there should be consequences for actions, but so this is as someone who's worked in jail, right? So this was kind of interesting. People will judge me for talking to or even trying to support people who are toxic and masculine. They're like, oh my god, you're such an asshole for giving these people a platform. How could you make the world a worse place?
There it is. Fucking Karens.
And I felt my work oh, look at you, you're so compassionate.
Yeah. I wonder who's more toxically masculine. The murderer with face tattoos that, is in jail for 20 years, or this content creator that, says that women are whores. Right? I mean, God, geez, guys, I wonder.
That anyone you see on social media is
with all the knowledge they've accrued. Have you ever wondered why you might play a game and think, wow, did the developer not make all of those mistakes last version of the game? Why are we making them again? Yeah, institutional knowledge walks out the door. Now, what we're talking about today is Battlefield. Your buy-in with that game helped it dethrone Call of Duty at launch, but of course, that doesn't really matter to EA's leadership anymore. They want more. And what happens next, I think, tells you everything you need to know about how the people running these studios think about the people who make their games. So if it's all about the money, then what about the money? Battlefield 6 boosted EA's financials incredibly. Year on year, they were up 38% in net bookings, so from 2.2 billion to just over 3 for the 3 months after the game launched. That was good, and it was on top of even more good news because EA Sports FC did fairly well, and even Apex Legends had some double-digit growth, which is fairly rare for that game now. But it's BF6 that led the way as the best-selling game of 2025. That was a first for the series, they got new records for player engagement, and EA's execs also just locked down an extravagant deal with the Saudi Public Investment Fund. So, they've got their payouts incoming, they've got their 5-year gamble with Battlefield actually paying off. Surely they would have been thrilled, right? Obviously not. There is just one problem, and that is the net revenue in this quarter last year was 1.88 billion. That was Dragon Age, NHL 25, and some Sims expansions along with live service revenue. That means that Battlefield's success only boosted them to $1.9 billion. Very sad. I'm sure we all feel awful for them. Now, that still is EA making incredible amounts of money, but it's not an incredible enough amount of money, and the rate isn't fast enough. So, how do you solve that? How do you very quickly make yourself be more profitable? I think we all have an idea. According to IGN sources, staff have been laid off across all of the Battlefield studios. That's DICE, Criterion, Ripple Effect, and Motive. EA's calling it a realignment, and they say no studio closures are planned, but the layoffs are widespread amongst teams and amongst disciplines, which is a great recipe for making players happy in the long term, which a few Battlefield players maybe aren't right now. But there is some extra context to this story. An Ars Technica report from last year flagged the scope of EA's ambitions, like literally just how huge they were. The budget had ballooned past $400 million because of development delays, and EA leadership at one point were reportedly targeting a 100 million player number across the game's lifespan. That's about 70 million more than Battlefield 1, BF1 being the franchise's mass market high point. So, kinda tough. Now, those player targets may have been reachable through Gauntlet and RedSec, which were their free-to-play modes, and you can maybe see how they thought. What if Core Battlefield gives us the best Core Battlefield numbers we've ever got, better than BF1? And then what if RedSec gets us Call of Duty Warzone numbers? Then we'll have 100 million. Yippee! That's probably the deluded wishful thinking that went on. Of course, as we know, both RedSec and Gauntlet were rushed out pretty much immediately after launch as a sort of onboarding ramp that just ended up creating friction between paying players and free players who just wanted different things from their Battlefield experience. Then quality issues with the December update slowed Season 2, and with that, new income, the new Battle Pass, would have been frozen. And there is, of course, that is likely led to some internal reorganization, all of that was to Battlefield Studios, somewhat an internal advocate, Battlefield from some of the worst decisions. That is certainly what we believe, generally speaking, previously. With the game then, the live service was not delivered at the pace that we were on. In fairness, we delivered at the pace that many players expected. Here's the thing, Battlefield is not the only live service game on Earth, staff. And the pattern between the two we're going to talk about tells you something really important. Actually may not be about the games at all. In fact, the developers their free-to-play live service version of Steam millions of players. Amazing news! But as a studio by currency paywall, and that does break a promise made during Skate's announcement back in 2022 that they would have, quote, no map areas locked behind paywalls. Lovely. That's a promise that was there in their FAQ until they quietly was there. Now their response is just like, well, sometimes plans have to change. That's part of the deal with the building public. Well, you get that. I suppose they needed more income, so they needed to break the promises to get that income. But the thing is, you can also make more money by spending less money. Layoffs. So Full Circle and Battlefield Studios likely are suffering from the same problem. They cost a lot of money to run. EA invested heavily in setting this up. Full Circle was built from the ground up, and Battlefield had a similar plan with Ridgeline Games, but of course they shut down Ridgeline Games. There's the whole debacle with the campaign of Battlefield, and overall, they took 4 studios, they gave 3 of them no other projects, and they just put all of them in Battlefield. That's extremely expensive. So, fewer staff, lower operating cost, higher margin for your live service, fairly simple logic, fairly simple plan. Seems that's what they're doing. But here's what's interesting. Even if the live service income was disappointing, and I'm ready to believe that it was, EA's leadership have an entirely different reason right now to be thinking about looking efficient, and it is nothing to do with the actual video games. Think about it this way. We know that Battlefield 2042 was a comparative failure for EA, so much so that they spent years and hundreds of millions rebuilding their development pipeline for BF6. While we do know that staff attrition was rather high at the company, do you know what also didn't happen whenever 2042 was just floundering about, I guess, like a fish out of water? Big staff layoffs. Those did not happen. Despite all of the financial damage done with BF 2042, they did not do layoff waves. And of course, 2042 was almost certainly making a shitload less money than Battlefield 6. So if a 2042-like situation doesn't inspire layoffs, and that's a game that multiple studios were working on as well, then maybe this is less about the game